Saturday morning, Purple Heart veteran Gus Whitmore waters his wife's memorial roses in his dress blues. Same ritual for 3 years since Clara passed. The smell of fresh mulch, distant lawnmower hum, morning dew catching the sunlight. Then HOA. Karen strikes. Marlene Pemberton storms over, clipboard in hand, face twisted with pure entitlement. "Take off that costume now! This is a respectable neighborhood!" Gus sets down his watering can, looks at her with the patience of someone who's actually seen combat. "Ma'am, this isn't a costume. I earned these stripes in 3 tours. I don't care what you think you did overseas," she spits. "This is America, and we have standards." Wait, did she just tell a Purple Heart veteran that wearing his uniform dishonors America in his own front yard, while tending his dead wife's roses? Oh, this Karen has no idea what's coming. What would you do if someone disrespected your service like this? Where are you watching from? Drop your HOA horror stories below. Meet Gus Whitmore, not your average HOA victim. This 72-year-old widower is a Purple Heart recipient who served 32 years in the Army, including 3 combat tours. His PTSD isn't just a label, it's a VA-documented condition with an unusual but effective treatment, wearing his dress uniform during therapeutic activities. Every Saturday for 3 years since cancer took his wife Clara, Gus performs the same ritual, dress blues on, walk to the front yard, tend Clara's memorial rose garden. Those deep red American beauties aren't just flowers, they're growing where her ashes rest beneath the soil. The smell of bacon wafts from kitchen windows around Pinewood Estates as garage doors rumble open and sprinkler systems click to life. This suburban paradise houses 127 middle-class families where everyone waves when they drive by. Everyone except Marlene Pemberton. Marlene's been HOA president for 8 years, ever since she moved here, and immediately declared war on declining standards. She's got a measuring tape in her white BMW, license plate, blessed. Fines residents for grass being a 1/4 inch too tall, and somehow got her McMansion approved despite violating 3 setback requirements herself. Here's the thing about Marlene, she's got a system. Target vulnerable homeowners with endless violations, make their lives miserable, then swoop in through her real estate business to buy their properties at below market prices. 3 families have voluntarily relocated in the past 2 years. Coincidence? Sure, if you believe in the tooth fairy. Her husband sits on city council, her golf buddies include the police chief, and her construction company just got a no-bid contract for the neighborhood entrance renovation. Nice work if you can get it. But today, Marlene made her first fatal mistake. She targeted the wrong guy. See, while she's been busy measuring hedges, Gus has been the perfect neighbor. HOA fees, paid early every month, grass height, exactly 2.5 inches. Paint color, approved beige number 4 from the official palette. The man follows every rule to the letter. The crunch of gravel under her designer sneakers announces Marlene's return, violation notice already printed. She's got that look, the one that says she's about to ruin someone's weekend just because she can. "Mr. Whitmore, this is your official notice. Inappropriate attire in common areas. $150 fine, due immediately." Gus reads the paper carefully. His voice stays level, respectful. "Ma'am, I'm on my own property, tending my garden." The HOA covenant clearly states residents must maintain appropriate appearance standards. "Interesting," Gus says quietly. "I noticed young Tommy across the street does his yard work in football gear every Saturday. No violation there?" For just a second, Marlene's mask slips. "That's different." "How so?" "This is about property values, not whatever this is." She waves at his uniform like it's contaminated. Gus nods slowly. "I see. So, selective enforcement based on what you personally approve of." Here's your first legal nugget. Selective enforcement is the quickest way to invalidate HOA rules in court. Takeaway: always document when rules apply to you but not your neighbors. It's your strongest defense. Marlene's face flushes. You have 7 days to pay or face daily penalties. She storms back to her BMW, leaving Gus standing there with the violation notice. What Marlene doesn't know is that she just picked a fight with someone who's actually won them. Unlike her previous victims, retirees on fixed incomes, young families scared of legal costs, Gus has something she's never encountered: time, patience, and absolutely nothing left to lose. Plus, and this is important, he actually read the original HOA charter. all 47 pages, including the part about patriotic displays being protected community assets. Oops, the game is about to change, and Marlene has no idea she's playing chess with someone who's been thinking 3 moves ahead since before she was born. Marlene doesn't waste time. By Monday morning, she's called an emergency HOA board meeting, which is adorable since her board consists of 3 golf buddies and 1 poor sap who got tricked into volunteering. The community center smells like stale coffee and desperation as they gather around a folding table that's probably older than some of their grandchildren. "Gentlemen," Marlene announces, "we have a situation. A resident is flagrantly violating our appearance standards." Board member Frank Morrison, retired insurance adjuster who's been terrified of Marlene since she made him repaint his mailbox twice, nervously adjusts his glasses. What exactly did he do? Military costume, in public, completely inappropriate. "Wait," says Dorothy Henley, the one board member with an actual spine. "You mean Gus Whitmore, the Purple Heart veteran, for wearing his dress uniform?" "I don't care if he has a Purple Heart or a purple tutu," Marlene snaps. "Rules are rules." Meanwhile, Gus is doing what any good soldier does when facing an enemy: intelligence gathering. At the county clerk's office, surrounded by fluorescent lighting that makes everyone look like extras from a zombie movie, he digs through incorporation documents. The musty smell of old records and decades of bureaucratic coffee stains reminds him of Army paperwork. Tedious but absolutely necessary. That's when he strikes gold. Page 34 of the original HOA charter, buried in language drier than week-old toast. Patriotic displays, including but not limited to flags, military insignia, and veteran commemorative items, shall be considered protected community assets enhancing neighborhood character. Legal nugget: always read the original incorporation documents, not just current bylaws. Takeaway: HOAs often pass rules that directly contradict their founding documents, making those rules legally unenforceable. But Gus finds something even better. The incorporation papers list the original board members, and guess whose construction company handled the initial development? Pemberton and Associates, owned by Marlene's husband Richard, who somehow scored a no-bid contract for the recent entrance renovation. Conflict of interest much? Gus files his formal appeal through proper channels because that's what you do. Follow the process, document everything, give them every chance to hang themselves. The appeal hearing arrives Wednesday evening with tension thick enough to spread on toast. The community center is packed. Word travels fast when someone dares challenge Queen Marlene. Gus sits quietly in front, appeal documents organized like the military operation this is becoming. Marlene bangs her gavel like she's trying to wake the dead. The board will hear the appeal of Mr. Whitmore regarding citation 2024-156. Gus approaches the microphone. "Thank you, Madam President. I'm contesting this violation based on the original charter, Section 12C, which explicitly protects patriotic displays." He slides the relevant page across the table. The board members stare at it like it's written in hieroglyphics. Frank Morrison clears his throat. "This does seem to indicate—" "Current bylaws supersede outdated language," Marlene interrupts without even reading it. "Motion to deny." "Second," chirps Bradley Walsh, whose lawn care company gets all the HOA contracts. "What a coincidence." Dorothy raises her hand. "Shouldn't we actually review the document before—" "All in favor of denying the appeal?" 3 hands shoot up faster than scared rabbits. Dorothy votes no. Appeal denied. Fine increased to $300. But Marlene can't resist going full villain. Furthermore, effective immediately, we're adding a new rule: no military paraphernalia visible from public areas. The room goes dead silent. Even her supporters look uncomfortable. "That's retroactive enforcement," Dorothy objects. "You can't—" "Watch me." Meeting adjourned. Here's Marlene's fatal mistake. She just created a rule specifically targeting veterans in front of witnesses while ignoring legally binding charter language. That's not just stupid, it's potentially a federal civil rights violation. As Gus walks to his truck, his phone buzzes. Text from Dorothy. "Perkins Diner tomorrow, 9 a.m. Bring coffee money and that charter document." But Gus has one more surprise. Remember that construction contract? He spent Tuesday afternoon at the city planning office. Turns out Pemberton and Associates has received over $200,000 in HOA contracts over the past 3 years, all approved by votes where Marlene abstained but her husband somehow still got the work. By Thursday morning, this isn't just about a uniform violation anymore. It's about corruption, selective enforcement, and what's starting to smell like a federal case. Time for Gus to stop playing defense. Thursday morning at Perkins' Diner, Dorothy slides into the booth across from Gus with a stack of papers thicker than a Stephen King novel. The smell of bacon grease and burnt coffee hangs in the air while she spreads documents across the Formica table like she's planning D-Day. "Gus, I've been fighting this woman for 2 years," she says, stirring sugar into coffee that could probably power a small engine. "But what happened last night? That was different. She's scared." Dorothy's been documenting everything since Marlene cited her for parking her Honda too close to the street, a violation that somehow doesn't apply to Marlene's BMW blocking the sidewalk every Tuesday during tennis practice. The woman's got spreadsheets, photos, and a filing system that would make the IRS weep with joy. "Look at this," Dorothy says, pointing to a violation notice. "Miguel and Rosa Santos got fined for ethnic garden decorations. You know what those decorations were? Ceramic frogs. Apparently lawn gnomes are culturally appropriate, but ceramic frogs are threatening to neighborhood character." Meanwhile, Marlene's having her own Thursday morning meltdown. She's pacing around her granite kitchen island like a caged tiger, phone pressed to her ear, talking to her lawyer, well, her golf buddy who happens to have a law degree from a correspondence school. "Bob, I need this veteran problem to disappear. Can we claim disturbing the peace?" "Marlene, the man waters flowers in his own yard. That's not illegal." "Then make it illegal." Here's where Marlene makes her next strategic blunder. She decides to escalate because apparently when you're in a hole, the smart move is to rent a backhoe. By Friday morning, Gus finds a surveyor in his front yard. Not just any surveyor. Earl Thompson, the most expensive property specialist in the county, paid for with anonymous HOA emergency funds to investigate Gus's alleged boundary violations. Earl sets up his equipment with the methodical precision of someone who's measured half the county and seen every property dispute imaginable. His instruments beep steadily as neighbors gather like it's a free outdoor theater performance. "What's the situation here, Earl?" Gus asks. Earl checks his clipboard with the expression of a man who already knows this is going to end badly for someone. "Lady says your rose garden's trespassing onto HOA property. Gotta verify the boundaries." 3 hours later, Earl packs up his equipment wearing the look of someone about to deliver news that's going to ruin somebody's day. Spoiler alert, it's not Gus. "Well?" Marlene demands, materializing from her house like a designer-dressed vampire. Earl clears his throat. "Sir's garden is actually sitting 2 inches inside his property line. Your deck, however, ma'am, that's encroaching 3 feet onto HOA common area." The sound of Marlene's designer heels on gravel has never been so furious as she storms back to her McMansion, already dialing her phone. But Gus has been busy too. While Marlene was measuring roses, he was at City Hall discovering some fascinating financial arrangements. Pemberton and Associates owes $47,000 in unpaid contractor liens. 3 recent HOA projects were mysteriously completed by subcontractors that happened to be Richard Pemberton's shell companies. Financial nugget. Public records reveal contractor liens, business ownership, and payment defaults. Takeaway. When fighting HOA corruption, follow the money through public documents. Corruption always leaves a paper trail. Saturday morning arrives with Gus in his dress uniform, but this time he's got backup. Jim Henderson from 2 streets over shows up in Vietnam-era fatigues. Then comes Tony Reyes, fresh from Afghanistan, wearing his dress blues. 3 generations of American veterans quietly tending gardens. Marlene watches from her window like a hawk studying mice, then makes her next brilliant decision. She calls the police. Officer Jake Martinez pulls up, takes one look at 3 elderly veterans watering plants, and probably contemplates a career change. Jake knows exactly who Gus Whitmore is from VFW meetings, and he's got a pretty good idea what this is really about. "Ma'am, what's your emergency?" "Arrest them! They're violating HOA regulations and disturbing the peace." Officer Martinez studies the scene. 3 quiet veterans, some roses, and the gentle sound of sprinklers. "Ma'am, HOA violations aren't criminal matters. And they're gardening." "Then arrest them for conspiracy." "To commit horticulture?" Marlene's face turns purple. "I'm calling Chief Morrison. He plays golf with my husband every Thursday." That's when Officer Martinez's demeanor shifts because threatening police officers with political connections isn't just stupid. It's the kind of thing that generates official incident reports. "Ma'am, you're welcome to call anyone you'd like, but I'm not arresting people for watering flowers." As the patrol car drives away, Gus realizes something crucial. Marlene isn't just corrupt and petty. She's panicking, and panicked people make the kind of mistakes that end up in federal court. Time to start collecting evidence. Sunday brings an unexpected visitor to Gus's front door. A weaselly-looking man in an ill-fitting suit claiming to be a neighborhood safety inspector starts taking photos of Gus's house from every angle. The click of his camera shutter echoes off the concrete like some kind of suburban paparazzi nightmare. Turns out Marlene hired a private investigator, because nothing says, "I'm totally not unhinged," quite like paying someone to stalk a 72-year-old veteran who grows roses. The PI, who introduces himself as Detective Larry Schumacher, though Dorothy's quick Google search reveals he's actually a former mall security guard with a photography hobby, spends Monday morning digging through trash cans and interviewing neighbors about Gus's suspicious activities. "Has he ever displayed aggressive behavior?" Larry asks Mrs. Patterson while she's getting her mail. "You mean like the time he helped me carry groceries when my hip was acting up? Terrifying." Meanwhile, Marlene's spreading rumors faster than gossip at a church potluck. She's telling anyone who'll listen that Gus's military record is questionable, and his PTSD makes him potentially dangerous to children. The smell of fresh-baked manipulation hangs in the air as thick as her desperation. But here's where Marlene makes her biggest mistake yet. She decides to weaponize the HOA's environmental health clause to claim that Gus's rose garden attracts undesirable wildlife that threatens the community. The undesirable wildlife? Bees. Yes, she's literally complaining about bees pollinating flowers. If irony were a substance, you could mine it from Marlene's front yard. Wednesday morning, Gus receives another violation notice, this one citing maintaining habitat for potentially aggressive insects, Appendix J, subsection 4C. The fine? $500 with daily penalties of $50 until the environmental hazard is removed. Dorothy's coffee nearly comes out her nose when she reads it. She wants you to kill the bees? What's next? Citations for butterflies being too colorful? But Gus has been busy with his own investigation. His friend Colonel Patricia Reed, retired JAG attorney with a law degree from Georgetown and zero patience for suburban stupidity, has been analyzing the HOA's legal vulnerabilities. "Gus," Patricia says over the phone, her voice carrying the authority of someone who's faced down actual enemies. "This woman just handed us a federal case on a silver platter. Legal nugget number 3. The Americans with Disabilities Act protects veterans' therapeutic activities, and any HOA restriction that interferes with prescribed PTSD treatment violates federal law. Takeaway: medical prescriptions for therapeutic activities override all HOA aesthetic rules. It's not optional, it's federal law." But Patricia found something even better. Remember those incorporation documents? The original HOA charter explicitly mentions encouraging beneficial wildlife and native plant species. Marlene's bee citation directly violates the HOA's own founding principles. Thursday brings the real fireworks. Sarah Chen, a reporter from the County Herald, shows up at Gus's door. Her father was a Korean War veteran, and she's got that particular look journalists get when they smell a story that's going to win awards. "Mr. Whitmore, I understand you're being harassed for wearing your military uniform." Within an hour, Sarah's interviewed 6 neighbors, photographed the violation notices, and discovered that Marlene's husband's construction company has received over $200,000 in HOA contracts over 3 years, all without competitive bidding. The story runs Friday morning with the headline, "HOA President Targets Purple Heart Veteran Over Memorial Garden." The online version goes viral faster than cat videos, with comments ranging from supportive to absolutely savage. But Marlene's not done yet. Friday afternoon, she shows up at Gus's door with 2 HOA board members and a demand that he sign a voluntary compliance agreement to remove the roses and cease all military-themed activities. "Mr. Whitmore," she says, her voice dripping with fake sweetness, "we're prepared to reduce your fines to 0 if you'll just work with us here." Gus looks at the document, then at Marlene, then back at the document. The sound of his neighbor's lawnmowers creates a peaceful suburban symphony that contrasts beautifully with the tension crackling in the air. "Mrs. Pemberton," he says quietly, "I've got a counteroffer for you." He pulls out a thick manila envelope. "This contains documentation of your husband's no-bid contracts, evidence of selective enforcement against minorities and veterans, and a formal complaint filed this morning with the Department of Housing and Urban Development." Marlene's face goes white, then red, then some color that doesn't exist in nature. "You also might want to know," Gus continues, that your private investigator has been photographing children at the playground. Parents are asking questions. The crunch of gravel under Marlene's retreating footsteps sounds like victory. But Gus knows this is just the beginning, because when cornered animals get desperate, they get dangerous. Time to prepare for war. Saturday morning brings Colonel Patricia Reed to Gus's kitchen table, armed with legal documents that could end this war before lunch. The smell of fresh coffee mingles with the sound of pages rustling as she spreads federal statutes across the table like a general planning the final assault. "Gus, forget everything you think you know about HOA law," Patricia says, adjusting her reading glasses. "We're not in Kansas anymore. We're in federal territory." She slides the first document across the table. The Service Members Civil Relief Act doesn't just protect active duty personnel. Recent amendments extend protections to veterans engaged in therapeutic activities prescribed by VA medical professionals. Gus reads the highlighted section. His uniform ritual isn't just a personal choice anymore, it's federally protected medical treatment. But here's the real bombshell, Patricia continues, pulling out a thicker file. Your PTSD diagnosis and the VA's prescription for therapeutic uniform wear? That triggers Americans with Disabilities Act protections. Marlene isn't just violating HOA rules, she's committing federal civil rights violations. The implications hit like artillery fire. Every violation notice, every threat, every demand that he remove his uniform becomes evidence of federal discrimination. The fines aren't just harassment anymore, they're potential criminal acts. Dorothy arrives with her nephew Kevin, a forensic accountant who works white-collar crime cases for the state. The smell of his energy drink mingles with the coffee as he opens his laptop, revealing spreadsheets that would make Al Capone's bookkeeper nervous. "Ladies and gentlemen," Kevin announces, "we've got ourselves a good old-fashioned embezzlement scheme." The numbers tell a story uglier than Marlene's personality. Over 3 years, $127,000 has disappeared from HOA reserve funds through a network of shell companies, inflated contracts, and phantom maintenance fees. Richard Pemberton's construction business isn't just getting sweetheart deals, it's systematically looting the neighborhood. "Look at this," Kevin says, pointing to a line item. "Emergency roof repair on the clubhouse. $47,000. I drove by yesterday. There's no clubhouse. It's a covered picnic table." Financial revelation. Forensic accounting shows money flowing from HOA reserves through Pemberton and Associates to 3 shell companies, all registered to the same P.O. box. Takeaway: complex money laundering schemes always leave digital footprints, follow the bank transfers and corporate registrations. But the smoking gun sits in Dorothy's purse. Remember that private investigator Marlene hired? Larry the mall cop made a critical error. He photographed not just Gus's house, but also his own investigative notes. Dorothy's grandson, who apparently learned photography from YouTube and conspiracy theories from Reddit, managed to zoom in on those notes. The photos reveal Marlene's real strategy: force out Gus and 2 other elderly homeowners, then have her husband's company buy their properties at below-market prices for development opportunities. The same pattern used on 3 families over the past 2 years. Patricia leans back in her chair, wearing the expression of a lawyer who's just realized she's holding 4 aces. "Gus, this isn't just about your uniform anymore. We're looking at federal civil rights violations, systematic fraud, conspiracy to commit mail fraud, and possible RICO violations." "RICO?" Dorothy asks. "Racketeering. When you use an organization like an HOA to commit ongoing crimes, the federal government gets very interested." The kitchen falls silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of someone's leaf blower. Everyone realizes they're not dealing with a petty HOA dispute anymore. They're sitting on evidence of systematic corruption that could send people to federal prison. Kevin closes his laptop with a snap. "How far do you want to take this?" Gus looks around the table at these unlikely allies: a retired JAG officer, a retired teacher, and a forensic accountant who probably bills more per hour than most people make in a week. Outside his window, Clara's roses are blooming despite Marlene's best efforts to destroy them. "All the way," he says quietly. "Time to call in the cavalry." Monday morning transforms Gus's living room into a war room that would make the Pentagon jealous. Patricia spreads federal statutes across the coffee table while Dorothy organizes 3 years of HOA violation notices by date, neighbor, and type of harassment. The smell of fresh printer ink mingles with Kevin's energy drinks as he sets up dual monitors displaying financial forensics that look like something from a cybercrime thriller. "All right, people," Patricia announces, channeling her inner general. "We're going multi-pronged warfare, federal civil rights complaint, state criminal referral, media coordination, and neighborhood political action. This isn't just about Gus anymore. We're taking down a criminal enterprise." Kevin pulls up bank records that make Enron's accounting look simple. "Phase 1, I'm filing a formal complaint with the State Attorney General's Financial Crimes Unit. We've got wire fraud, mail fraud, and embezzlement with a money trail cleaner than a GPS route. Richard Pemberton's been using HOA funds like his personal piggy bank." Dorothy contributes her secret weapon, a color-coded spreadsheet tracking 3 years of selective enforcement. Miguel got fined for ceramic frogs, but Marlene's neighbor has a pink flamingo collection that violates 12 different aesthetic rules. Mrs. Kim got cited for excessive holiday decorations. She had 3 Christmas lights. Meanwhile, the Hendersons' inflatable Santa Village gets a pass because they're golf buddies. Strategic knowledge nugget. Document everything with photos, dates, and witnesses. Selective enforcement patterns prove discriminatory intent in federal court. Takeaway. Racism and bias leave paper trails that become admissible evidence when properly documented. Sarah Chen arrives with a media strategy that would make CNN producers weep with envy. Her Korean War veteran father taught her that some battles are won in courtrooms, others in the court of public opinion. "We coordinate the federal filing with my exclusive story," she explains, setting up her recording equipment. "Human interest angle, Purple Heart veteran fights HOA corruption. But we don't stop there. I've got contacts at 3 regional TV stations and a producer friend at 60 Minutes who loves David versus Goliath stories." Patricia outlines the federal strategy with military precision. HUD complaint filed Tuesday morning alleging ADA violations and civil rights discrimination. The federal government doesn't mess around with disability rights. They'll send investigators within 30 days. Meanwhile, I'm contacting the FBI's Public Corruption Unit about the racketeering aspects. But the real genius move comes from an unexpected source. Dorothy's 20-something grandson, Tyler, who usually spends his time creating TikTok videos about conspiracy theories, suggests something that makes everyone stop and stare. "Grandma, what if we crowdsource this? Start a GoFundMe for Gus's legal fees, but really use it to spotlight HOA corruption nationwide. At HOA corruption, #veteran rights. Stand with Gus. I bet we could get this trending in 48 hours. The room falls silent as everyone realizes this kid just weaponized social media for justice. Patricia nods slowly, clearly impressed. "Tyler, that's actually brilliant. Public pressure forces official action faster than any legal filing." Wednesday brings the neighborhood organizing phase. Gus's garage becomes campaign headquarters for the HOA recall election. The smell of fresh pizza mingles with the sound of staplers as volunteers prepare petition packets. Dorothy's kitchen produces an endless stream of coffee while neighbors share their own Marlene horror stories. "She made us remove our vegetable garden because tomatoes weren't aesthetically consistent," says Maria Santos, signing the recall petition with the determination of someone who's had enough. "Fined me $200 because my Halloween decorations were culturally insensitive," adds Jim Henderson. "They were jack-o'-lanterns. Apparently, carved pumpkins threaten property values." Kevin sets up a financial transparency presentation that breaks down the embezzlement in terms so simple a kindergartner could follow. Charts showing money flowing from landscape maintenance into Richard's personal accounts. Photographs of the emergency repairs that never happened. Bank records proving the shell company connections. "Here's the beautiful part," Kevin explains to the gathered crowd. "Once we file criminal complaints, all HOA financial records become evidence. No more secret meetings, no more hidden contracts. Everything gets subpoenaed." Thursday evening brings the final preparation phase. Patricia files the federal complaint with ceremonial precision while Sarah coordinates media releases. The sound of documents being notarized echoes through Gus's kitchen as neighbors sign affidavits supporting the civil rights violations. But the most powerful moment comes when Gus puts on his dress uniform one more time, not for gardening, but for the photographer documenting his story. Standing in front of Clara's thriving rose garden, Purple Heart visible on his chest, he embodies everything Marlene tried to destroy. "This isn't about me anymore," he tells Sarah's camera. "It's about every veteran, every neighbor, every family that's been bullied by petty tyrants who think power means stepping on other people." The crunch of gravel announces cars arriving as supporters gather for the final strategy session. Tomorrow, they stop playing defense and start the counterattack that will end Marlene's reign of terror forever. Friday morning hits like a hurricane. Sarah's story goes live at 6 a.m. with the headline, Purple Heart Veteran Faces HOA Harassment Over Memorial Garden, and by 8 a.m. it's trending on 3 social media platforms. The smell of chaos fills the air as Marlene's phone starts ringing like a fire alarm. But instead of backing down, Marlene doubles down with the desperation of someone who's just realized the FBI might be knocking on her door soon. She calls an emergency board meeting for Friday afternoon, clearly planning something that would make Machiavelli proud. What she doesn't know is that Dorothy's been recording every HOA meeting for 2 years on her grandson's suggestion. Evidence preservation, Tyler called it. Boomer-proofing the corruption, is how he actually described it. The meeting starts normally enough, with Marlene's usual gavel-banging theatrics in the community center that smells like industrial carpet cleaner and broken dreams. But then she drops her bombshell. Due to ongoing legal threats and media harassment, she announces with the sincerity of a snake oil salesman, the board is implementing emergency measures. Effective immediately, we're dissolving the current HOA structure and liquidating all assets to avoid potential liabilities. Dorothy's jaw drops. Frank Morrison looks confused. Bradley Walsh nods like a bobblehead doll because he's never had an original thought in his life. You can't just dissolve an HOA to avoid federal investigations, Dorothy objects. Watch me, Marlene smirks, clearly believing she's found the perfect escape hatch. Legal reality check. Dissolving an HOA to avoid federal civil rights investigations isn't clever. It's obstruction of justice. Takeaway. Destroying evidence or dismantling organizations under federal investigation elevates misdemeanors to felonies. But Marlene's not done with her scorched earth strategy. Saturday night, Kevin's motion sensor cameras catch her red-handed in what can only be described as the most pathetic act of vandalism in suburban history. There she is at 2 a.m., dressed in all black like some kind of discount ninja, sneaking through Gus's front yard with pruning shears. The infrared footage shows her systematically destroying Clara's memorial roses, cutting stems and trampling flower beds with the focused rage of someone who's completely lost her mind. The sound of breaking branches mingles with her muttered curses as she attacks flowers planted in memory of a cancer victim. If there's a lower circle of hell specifically for people who vandalize memorial gardens, Marlene just earned herself a VIP pass. Sunday morning brings the devastating aftermath. Gus stands in his front yard surveying the destruction. 3 years of carefully tended roses destroyed, Clara's memorial desecrated, stems scattered across the lawn like broken promises. The smell of trampled mulch and crushed petals creates a crime scene that would make experienced detectives sick. But here's where Marlene's midnight ninja routine becomes her undoing. Kevin's cameras didn't just catch her vandalizing the garden. They caught her stealing the ceramic memorial plaque Clara's grandchildren made in art class. Federal prosecutors love cases with clear video evidence and sympathetic victims. Dorothy arrives with coffee and fury, taking one look at the devastation and immediately calling Officer Martinez. Jake, you need to see this, and bring your report forms. The police report gets filed with unprecedented speed, probably because even cops don't appreciate people who destroy memorial gardens. The charges? Criminal mischief, destruction of property, and trespassing. The evidence? High-definition video that's clearer than most Hollywood movies. But Marlene's legal troubles are just beginning. Kevin's forensic analysis reveals that Friday's emergency liquidation included transferring $47,000 from HOA reserves to an account controlled by Richard's shell company. Moving money while under federal investigation isn't creative accounting. It's a federal crime. Monday brings FBI agents to Marlene's door. Not local cops, not sheriff's deputies, but actual federal agents with badges, warrants, and the kind of serious expressions that make guilty people confess before anyone asks questions. The sound of their footsteps on her front porch probably echoes like thunder in her designer-decorated hallway. Sarah Chen's follow-up story, HOA president caught on camera vandalizing Veterans Memorial Garden, goes viral faster than anything since that dress that nobody could agree on the color of. The comment section becomes a support group for HOA victims nationwide, with people sharing horror stories that make Marlene look almost reasonable by comparison. Tyler's crowdfunding campaign hits $50,000 in donations from veterans, military families, and people who've had enough of petty neighborhood tyrants. The money isn't just for legal fees anymore, it's becoming a war chest for systematic HOA reform. But the real victory comes Tuesday morning when Gus finds neighbors replanting his garden without being asked. Maria Santos brings roses from her own yard. Jim Henderson shows up with mulch and a determination to restore Clara's memorial. The Henderson kids arrive with new ceramic decorations to replace what Marlene stole. The crunch of fresh mulch under their feet sounds like community solidarity, while the smell of new soil promises that Clara's garden will bloom again, stronger than before. Tuesday afternoon brings Marlene's most desperate gambit yet, facing federal charges, criminal vandalism complaints, and a community that's turned against her faster than milk in summer heat. She plays her final card. Hiring Marcus Webb, the most expensive attorney in the state capitol, whose reputation for destroying witnesses is matched only by his hourly rates. Webb arrives in a Mercedes that costs more than most people's houses, wearing a suit that probably required sacrificing an endangered animal and an attitude that could freeze hell. The smell of expensive cologne and legal intimidation fills the community center as he sets up for what can only be described as a scorched earth legal strategy. "Ladies and gentlemen," Webb announces to the packed room, his voice carrying the warmth of a tax audit, "my client is the victim of a coordinated harassment campaign led by individuals with questionable mental stability and potential criminal backgrounds." He's talking about Gus, a Purple Heart veteran. The audacity is so breathtaking that several people literally gasp. Dorothy stands up, her teacher voice cutting through the legal nonsense like a hot knife through butter. "Are you seriously claiming that a decorated veteran has questionable mental stability?" "I'm stating that PTSD can manifest in aggressive, paranoid behaviors that threaten community safety," Webb replies with the sensitivity of a chainsaw performing surgery. That's when Colonel Patricia Reed enters the room like the legal cavalry she is, carrying a briefcase that probably contains enough federal statutes to bury Webb's career. The sound of her heels on the community center floor echoes with military precision as she approaches the microphone. "Mr. Webb," she says, her JAG officer voice carrying decades of courtroom authority, "are you seriously arguing that VA-prescribed therapeutic activities constitute criminal behavior? Because that argument opens your client to additional federal civil rights violations." Webb's confident expression wavers slightly, like someone just realized they brought a knife to a gunfight. But Marlene won't be silenced. She's hired private security, 2 off-duty cops who clearly wish they were anywhere else, and is demanding that Gus be banned from all HOA common areas pending psychological evaluation. Wednesday brings the media circus to full bloom. 3 TV news trucks park on the street while neighbors give interviews about HOA tyranny. Tyler's social media campaign has reached 200,000 shares, with hashtag #StandWithGus trending nationally. The smell of camera equipment and reporter coffee creates an atmosphere of impending justice. Sarah Chen's investigation has uncovered the full scope of the Pembertons' operation. Bank records show they've systematically targeted elderly homeowners, minority families, and veterans over 5 years. The pattern is so clear that federal prosecutors are calling it a textbook case of housing discrimination. "This isn't just about one HOA," Sarah tells the camera, standing in front of Gus's rebuilt rose garden. "This is about a nationwide problem of unregulated neighborhood associations operating like criminal enterprises." But Marlene's not done yet. Thursday morning brings her most desperate move. She files a lawsuit against Gus, Dorothy, Patricia, and every neighbor who supported them, claiming defamation, conspiracy, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. The lawsuit demands $2 million in damages and asks for restraining orders against everyone involved. The legal documents, thick as a phone book and twice as ridiculous, accuse Gus of weaponizing his military status to intimidate law-abiding citizens, and claim his PTSD makes him a clear and present danger to the community. Kevin reads the lawsuit over his morning energy drink and nearly chokes. She's actually arguing that wearing a military uniform constitutes threatening behavior. That's either brilliant or completely insane. "Why not both?" Dorothy suggests. Friday brings the federal response that changes everything. FBI agents execute search warrants on the Pemberton house, Richards Construction Company, and all HOA financial records. The sound of evidence boxes being loaded into federal vehicles echoes through the neighborhood like thunder announcing a storm. But the real drama happens when Webb tries to intimidate Sarah Chen by demanding she reveal her sources and threatening to sue her newspaper for participating in a criminal conspiracy to destroy his client's reputation. Sarah's response, delivered with the calm professionalism of someone whose father faced actual enemies in Korea, becomes legendary. Mr. Webb, are you threatening a journalist for reporting on public records and federal investigations? Because that conversation is being recorded, and my editor has some very interesting friends at the Justice Department. Webb's expensive suit suddenly doesn't look so armor-like. Saturday morning brings the most beautiful sight in months. Marlene and Richard loading boxes into a moving truck under FBI supervision. Neighbors watch from their windows as federal agents catalog evidence, while the Pembertons pack their designer belongings with the frantic energy of people who know their time is up. The smell of diesel exhaust from the moving truck mingles with the sound of justice being served as Tyler live streams the departure for his social media followers. The comment section explodes with celebration emojis and demands for updates. But the sweetest moment comes when Gus, in his dress uniform, waters Clara's rebuilt rose garden while federal agents work across the street. The morning dew catches the sunlight like tears of joy as the neighborhood prepares for its first day of freedom in years. Tuesday evening brings the showdown everyone's been waiting for, an emergency city council meeting packed tighter than a sardine can at Christmas. The municipal building's main auditorium overflows with reporters, veterans, neighbors, and curiosity seekers drawn by the viral hashtags and promise of spectacular public justice. The smell of nervous sweat mingles with camera equipment and courthouse coffee as 3 TV news crews set up their equipment. Tyler live streams from the front row while Sarah Chen coordinates with her network contacts, because this story has officially gone national. Federal mediator Jennifer Walsh sits at the council table flanked by 2 FBI agents whose presence makes everyone sit up straighter. The sound of shuffling papers and whispered conversations creates an electric atmosphere of impending doom for someone. Marlene enters with Marcus Webb like she's walking to her own execution, which isn't far from the truth. Her designer suit can't hide the fact that she looks like she hasn't slept in a week, while Webb carries himself with the confidence of someone who's about to earn every penny of his ridiculous hourly rate. Gus walks in wearing his dress uniform, every ribbon and medal catching the fluorescent lights like armor forged from honor and sacrifice. The crowd instinctively stands, a spontaneous show of respect that makes Marlene's face twist with fury. City Council Chairman Davis bangs his gavel with the enthusiasm of someone who clearly wishes he'd called in sick. This emergency session will address allegations of civil rights violations, financial improprieties, and criminal conduct within the Pinewood Estates Homeowners Association. Webb stands first, his voice carrying the practiced arrogance of someone who's made a career of destroying decent people. Your Honor, my client is the victim of a systematic campaign of harassment orchestrated by individuals seeking to profit from manufactured outrage and media attention. The auditorium buzzes with angry murmurs until Patricia Reed approaches the microphone like justice incarnate. She carries a folder thick enough to stop bullets, containing 3 years of evidence that's about to end careers and possibly freedom. Ladies and gentlemen, let me present the facts, Patricia begins, her JAG officer voice cutting through Webb's nonsense like a laser through tissue paper. Mr. Whitmore is a Purple Heart recipient whose therapeutic uniform wear is prescribed by VA medical professionals and protected under federal disability law. She slides documents to the mediator while the FBI agents take notes. Mrs. Pemberton's violations include systematic discrimination against veterans, minorities, and elderly residents, embezzlement of HOA funds through shell companies, obstruction of federal investigations, and destruction of memorial property. The crowd's murmur grows louder as Patricia continues. The evidence includes video footage of Mrs. Pemberton vandalizing a cancer victim's memorial garden at 2 a.m., bank records showing $127,000 in fraudulent transfers, and documented patterns of selective enforcement targeting protected classes. Webb tries to interrupt, but federal mediator Walsh raises her hand with the authority of someone who's dealt with far more dangerous criminals than suburban HOA presidents. Mr. Webb, your client is facing potential federal racketeering charges. I suggest you focus on plea negotiations rather than character assassination. That's when Marlene snaps. Standing up despite Webb's restraining hand, she points at Gus with the fury of someone who's finally realized her perfect little kingdom is crumbling. I've sacrificed everything for this neighborhood, she shrieks, her voice echoing off the auditorium walls. Property values, standards, respectability, and this welfare case in his costume thinks he can destroy everything I've built. The room goes dead silent. Even the FBI agents look shocked. Gus stands slowly, walks to the microphone with the measured pace of someone who's faced real enemies and knows exactly how to respond to fake ones. The sound of his footsteps echoes in the stunned silence. "Ma'am," he says quietly, his voice carrying the weight of 32 years of service. "I didn't sacrifice for a neighborhood. I sacrificed for a country. There's a difference." The auditorium erupts in applause so thunderous it probably registers on seismic equipment. Patricia slides another document to the mediator, Gus's actual military record, including combat citations that make his service undeniable. Federal mediator Walsh reads the citations aloud. Bronze Star for valor under enemy fire. Purple Heart for wounds received in combat. Army Commendation Medal for exceptional service. 32 years of honorable service including 3 combat deployments. The applause continues until Webb tries one last desperate gambit, claiming Gus's PTSD makes him dangerous to the community. That's when every veteran in the auditorium stands up, and there are a lot of them. "Ma'am," says Vietnam veteran Jim Henderson, his voice shaking with rage. "My grandfather died at Normandy. My father served in Korea. I served in Vietnam. Are you telling us we're all too dangerous for suburbia?" Federal mediator Walsh bangs her gavel. "Mrs. Pemberton, you're under arrest for violations of federal civil rights law, conspiracy to commit fraud, and obstruction of justice." The sound of handcuffs clicking echoes through the stunned auditorium as Marlene's reign of terror officially ends. 6 months later, Pinewood Estates looks like a completely different neighborhood. The smell of fresh paint and community spirit fills the air as residents work together on projects that would have earned violations under Marlene's regime. Dorothy's election as HOA president wasn't just unanimous. It was celebrated with the kind of block party that actually brings people together instead of driving them apart. The new board includes 3 veterans, 2 teachers, and a nurse who understands that communities thrive on cooperation, not intimidation. Their first official act was rewriting the HOA charter to include explicit protections for patriotic displays, religious decorations, and reasonable personal expression. The second was establishing transparent financial oversight that makes Enron's accounting look secretive. Marlene's fate became a cautionary tale studied in law schools nationwide. Her plea bargain included 18 months in federal prison, 5 years probation, and full restitution of the embezzled funds. Richard lost his construction business, his city council seat, and his golf club membership, though losing the ability to play bad golf with corrupt buddies might actually improve his character. Final knowledge nugget. Federal civil rights violations carry mandatory minimum sentences and can't be pardoned by state governors. Takeaway. When HOAs violate federal law, the consequences follow defendants for life through permanent criminal records and civil rights monitoring. The recovered $89,000 funded something beautiful, the Clara Whitmore Memorial Scholarship for military families pursuing education. The annual award ceremony takes place in Gus's front yard, surrounded by roses that bloom brighter than ever, as if Clara herself approves of how her memory is being honored. Gus discovered his new purpose speaking at veteran events and law conferences about HOA rights. His presentation, Know Your Rights, Federal Law versus Neighborhood Bullies, has become legendary among civil rights attorneys. The man who just wanted to water his wife's roses quietly became a national advocate for veterans facing similar harassment. The annual Patriotic Gardening Day draws families from 3 counties to learn about native plants, memorial gardens, and community building. Children learn to plant flowers while their grandparents share military stories, creating connections that span generations. The sound of laughter mixing with sprinkler systems creates the suburban symphony Pinewood Estates was always meant to have. Tyler's social media campaign evolved into a nonprofit organization tracking HOA abuse nationwide. His hashtag HOA Reform has documented over 2,000 cases of selective enforcement, helping families fight back against petty neighborhood tyrants. The kid who started making TikTok videos about conspiracy theories ended up exposing real conspiracies that actually matter. Sarah Chen's investigation won 3 journalism awards and led to federal legislation requiring HOA financial transparency. Her follow-up series, Suburban Tyranny: America's HOA Crisis, sparked congressional hearings that resulted in new protections for veterans, minorities, and elderly residents facing neighborhood harassment. But the most beautiful transformation happened gradually, in small moments that rebuild trust between neighbors. Miguel Santos's ceramic frogs returned to his garden, joined by donations from neighbors who realized how ridiculous the original violation was. Mrs. Kim's holiday lights now include contributions from the entire block, creating December displays that would make theme parks jealous. The morning routine continues. Gus in his dress uniform, tending Clara's memorial garden every Saturday, while neighbors wave and children ask questions about military service. The difference is that now it's protected by federal law, supported by community love, and celebrated as the tribute it always was. Property values actually increased after Marlene's departure, proving that kindness and cooperation create more desirable neighborhoods than fear and intimidation. Real estate agents now advertise Pinewood Estates as a veteran-friendly community with transparent governance, selling points that attract the kind of families who make neighborhoods strong. As Gus waters the roses one sunny Saturday morning, a young veteran moves into Marlene's old house with his wife and twin daughters. The new neighbor introduces himself, mentions his own PTSD treatment, and asks about joining the Patriotic Gardening Club. "Welcome home, soldier," Gus says, handing him a watering can. "Clara would love the company." The morning dew sparkles on rose petals while children's laughter echoes through the neighborhood and an American flag waves gently in the breeze, exactly as it should be in a community that remembers what freedom actually means. Share your HOA nightmare story in the comments below. You're not alone in this fight. And hit that subscribe button because we've got more justice stories coming that'll restore your faith in standing up to bullies.